Hello? Are you here? The Green New Deal is a framework. It's not a plan. I just want everyone to know that. It's supposed to stimulate more legislation so that something happens. I just want to point out that we've had 100 years of government spending on our infrastructure, and it wasn't a problem then. Why is it a problem now?
About. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on.
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden's been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades.
Not necessarily Joe Biden.
Again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we need them.
We lost 200,000 jobs because we outsourced all our jobs through trade deals. That was not Democrats. They just voted for it.
500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. The Green New Deal, your massive new mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, It's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I
just need to
We had
respond
8 years of
very
private
quickly.
sector
Thank
job
you.
growth.
Thank
It
you.
didn't kill jobs.
Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and
That's
you voted
correct.
against it. So let's set the record straight.
He did vote against
Thank
that.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
China's been a major trade partner of ours for like 50 years.
Well, before I leave that, let me speak to
All the people that talk about stupid shit about China,
Everybody knows that NAFTA
they just don't
caused
understand.
literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border.
Like
President Trump
when
fought
people tell us that
to renegotiate NAFTA.
we've lost a
The
bunch
United
of
States is
economy
not the law of the land.
progression to China,
American people deserve to
that's
know.
not something that just happened.
Senator Kamala
They didn't
Harris
do that to
told
us.
10
We
members
let
of
them.
the Senate to vote against
Our
the
federal
United
government
States.
let that happen.
It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change.
She's
That
absolutely right.
You put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. I think the American people deserve to know that. It's probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. More liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So
Kamala Harris
with
signed on
regard
to a
to
lot
China,
of liberal stuff.
Look,
That's pretty true.
Susan, first and foremost,
Mike Pence was trying to attack her on that. That's not an attack.
and President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear. Made it clear again today. China and the world.
Do you guys ever remember a time where people said Obama was mad or happy about this?
into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February? Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades, in the way
Trump
that
didn't.
Joe Biden's cheerleader.
I know she wasn't the most liberal,
President
but
Trump made that
she
decision
prescribed to the ideology.
to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people
Okay,
deserve to know
he
that
just
Joe
talked
Biden
about
totally
suspending travel from China.
decision.
But we already had COVID here, so it didn't matter. We could have just left it the way it was, and we would have had the same effect.
President Trump
Vice
has
President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time
China.
is
We're
up.
going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
I love how people think
Senator
that
Harris, let me ask you the
Man.
same question that I asked the
Mike-
Vice President.
Mike
How would
Pence
you
has
describe
just talked
our
about a
fundamental relationship?
political platitude
Are
for the
we
last 30
competitors,
seconds, and then tried to
adversaries,
insert China.
enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had.
I also want to point out that
accomplishment.
our trade with China has always been a mutual agreement. It's not like we're just sending it one direction and we're not getting anything in return. That's insanity. That's not how this works at all.
For monitoring pandemics. They got away, they got rid of it. There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled
That's
them out.
true. We had a pandemic team
We
in
now
China
are
and they've been
looking
removed
at 210,000 Americans who have lost
because of
their
this
lives.
exact problem. Like, we were actually prepared for
Let's
this,
look at
and the Trump
the jobs
administration undid
we
two
mentioned.
major things that pretty much set us up for failure.
The trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession. And the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of
I don't know if that's
failed
correct.
war.
300,000 jobs
And
number.
let's talk
I think
about
it's less than
Standard
that, but I don't
Pew,
know.
a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries.
Oh, I know what she's
have
about to
now
say. This
decided
is true.
That they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the president of the
That's
United
facts.
States, the commander-in-chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the.
So there's
role of the
14
United States
OECD countries that
over the
Pew
past
Research
40
did
years.
a
And
study
times
on,
do change.
and
What's your definition?
most of those people, 13 of the 14 countries said that they did better than the United States in their response to coronavirus. The 14th country on that list was the United States, and they said they did better than everybody else. So, you know, you can take that for what it is.
I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated.
Yeah, Obama was a good statesman, though. I mean, you can't discredit that part of politics.
And so we know this in our personal.
I know he didn't really move the needle for a lot of things,
your
but
word to your friends.
that's a separate
Gotta
discussion.
be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, gotta stand with them. Gotta know who your adversaries are and keep them in check.
Like, you should go look up Justin Trudeau and Obama's relationship. We had a very good relationship with them.
He has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world.
That's true.
Let's take,
He
for
has done
example,
that.
Russia. So
I hope to God she doesn't go down
Russia
some
on
Russia
the
hoax.
Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the
That's
President
true.
of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community.
That's true. Trump absolutely denounced U.S. intelligence service on national television. I just want you all to remember that. Our president told everybody that our U.S. intelligence agencies were not correct when they were evaluating Russia's meddling. They absolutely were correct. Trump lied. He straight up lied about that.
We were
Okay?
in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan?
Oh, I have to back that up. I didn't hear what
And the thing that has
she
always
said.
of the United States Senate, America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in trade. The director of the FBI said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You
Deep
look
state,
at
people,
our
deep
friends
state.
At NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy,
Iran was definitely, absolutely
he pulled us out
following
and made
the
America less safe. So, Susan,
agreements
it's about
that were put into
relationships.
place during the
And
Iran
the
deal.
thing that has
They
always
decided
been part of
to,
the strength of our nation,
or Donald Trump's administration decided to pull us out. In the first year after that deal ended, their centrifuge production grew 325%. I can't remember the number, but that pulling out of that deal had an irreversible effect on Iran's path to nuclear weapons. I mean, that's not going to happen again.
More to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia Pacific, and we've stood strong.
That's not true. Pence just lied.
Those who would do us harm.
We did not increase our relationships. They're either the same or a little worse off. That's not true. In Asia, that is.
The size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took out their leader al-Baghdadi without one American casualty.
Yeah, I love. Okay, Mike Pence. I love how he's trying to claim credit for this.
For the death
Okay,
of thousands.
sure, maybe you did kill the leader of ISIS, but we've been in that country for 20 years. Okay, it took 20 years to figure this out. ISIS was something that we created after we left in 2014, I think, something like that. We left the region, and ISIS became what it was after Syria became a failed state. So I don't know about all this whole win on ISIS.
The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Miller. Breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan.
I also want to point out, before Pence tries to say that the Trump administration made the military better than it's ever been, the year prior to him taking office, the military budget was $680 billion. The following year, it was like $695. They didn't do shit. It's literally the same thing. I just want everyone to understand. That little tiny increase didn't do anything. All the apparatus that existed before Trump still exists now, and nothing changed there. So I just want everyone to know this.
And you talk about
Jesus Christ, now they're talking about Muslims.
The last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad, do harm to Americans.
Oh shit! Pence just lied again.
Safer, our allies.
Hold on, backing it up.
Traveling to Baghdad.
Thank you.
To the leading. The last administration transferred talk about
Okay, listen to this very carefully. All right.
The Iran nuclear deal. The last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor.
Thank you, Vice President.
Okay, Mike Pence just said that that Obama's administration, right at the ending year, tried to put a deal together with Saudi Arabia. Okay, so what you all need to know about this is, in the first 3 months of Trump being in office, one of the princes of Saudi Arabia came to Trump Tower in New York, paid him $300,000, and then like 3-4 months later, that big Saudi weapons deal happened. 1 year after that, Saudi Arabia had invaded Yemen, caused a giant famine. Like the BBC reported on this, all European news outlets reported on this happening. And like it just got brushed under the rug here in America. Nobody said anything really about it. It kind of got brought up like one time on NBC, and that was it. That giant weapons deal led to a famine in another country that had nothing to do with anything regarding that deal. And Trump took a bribe in like March of that year to have people stay at his hotel. That's insane.
Terrorism.
So Trump lied. I mean, Pence just lied again. Okay, he didn't put the correct context in.
Was traveling to Baghdad.
Thank you, Vice
do harm to Americans. President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is...
Okay, again, he's trying to take credit for killing somebody in a place where we've been for 20 years. Okay? That means killing him does nothing. Somebody else will come in and take that person's place. ISIS still exists. I mean, it's been beaten back a lot, and they come back. We've been doing that for about 3 years, 4 years, something like that. I'm just saying, he's trying to claim a win on this. There's no win here.
Safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you, Vice President.
take action.
I would like to give Senator
Pence is getting lost in his own words.
Not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thanks.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our...
I just want to point out again, not only did we pull out of the nuclear deal with Iran, but here we are, like, 3 years later after that happened, we killed their top general and called him a terrorist. Like, sure, they're responsible for a lot of state-sponsored violence. So is this country. We have 400 military bases around the world. It's insane.
Troops in Iraq.
So, you got to keep it real.
And They suffered serious brain injuries, and do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump.
Yeah, Kamala's about to go down the Donald Trump doesn't actually like the military rabbit hole, and I agree that's true. He constantly denigrates people that are service members. I mean, he doesn't come out and say service members are horrible people or something like that. If you believe the New York Times reporting on that story, or I mean, not the New York Times, the Atlantic's reporting on him calling troops suckers and losers, I mean, it seems believable because he's made denigrating statements in different ways in public, both in his rallies and in interviews. And it's not a crazy thing to think in private he would say something just a little more worse. Like, we all do that. We all talk differently around people we know really well and care about. Like, do you think Trump's not immune or is immune to that? Of course not. He says stuff in private that's probably super heinous, just like any of us would.
Where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it.
I mean, as far as I can tell, that story
Let's
came
say
out in 2018, and
what
it
he
was
said
pretty
about
true
John
at the time. I
McCain.
don't think it's changed. I'm pretty
A
sure
great
that Trump
American
said
hero.
this.
And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war.
Yeah, this is my point. The whole John McCain debate was a good example of this. Or, I mean, when he got in trouble for denigrating John McCain. War heroes aren't people that are captured or not captured. There's no metric here, okay? If you're in the service and you go to war, you're a war hero. That's how it works. Okay.
And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American
That's
soldiers.
true.
And you know what a bounty is?
That's true, and the
If
Trump administration
somebody puts a price on your head,
brushed that
and
under
they
the
will
rug.
pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin
That's true.
and never brought up the subject.
Trump
Joe
talked to
Biden
Vladimir
would never do
Putin
that.
5
Joe
or 6
Biden
times.
would
We
say
never
Joe
got a
Biden
transcript of those conversations.
would
We didn't
hold
see a
Russia to
recording of those
account for
conversations.
any
Nothing.
threat
That's really abnormal.
to
It's
our
kind of
nation's
strange
security
for
or to our
heads of
troops
state that are
who are
adversaries to meet like that and not
sacrificing
release
their
any
lives
information,
for the
purposely
sake
keep
of
it
our
private.
democracy
That's
and our
really
safety.
Thank you,
strange.
Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have.
I'm not
other
saying there's
important issues as
malfeasance
well.
there. I'm
I wanna-
saying it's
I want to make
strange.
sure we have a chance
I really
to
have
talk
to
about.
respond to that.
I'm
Look, she has.
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President,
Look,
but you've
I-
had more time than
Look,
she's
the-
had
the
so far.
slanders against President
The moderator is
Donald
correct.
Trump
Mike Pence has had a little more time.
regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry.
That's
Vice
not
President.
absurd, Mike
Active in the
Pence.
United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy.
This guy's going to try to pretend like Democrats don't serve in the military.
I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our
That's a
armed forces.
lie.
Any suggestion
You all know that's a lie.
ridiculous.
But
Let
thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
that
Vice
the American
President
people
Pence,
deserve- Susan,
Vice
the American
President
people
Pence,
deserve
I didn't,
to know
Vice President
that-
Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create the
deserve to know.
rules for tonight.
You know how I know Pence lied when he just said that? Because he had to try so hard to get the words out. He was straining to get the words out.
Which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right
which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court.
I hate this topic right
On
now.
Monday,
It's so
the
stupid
Senate
because
Judiciary
everything
Committee
about
is
this is
scheduled to open
really
hearings
just
on Amy Coney Barrett's
speculative.
allegations of the
So
Supreme
I don't
Court.
know.
Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement
Before this goes,
conservative majority.
here's the strategy. Mike Pence is going to try to pigeonhole Kamala into admitting she wants to pack the court. Joe Biden's campaign doesn't want to admit that they want to do something like that or not do something like that because no matter how they answer this, the Republicans are going to attack them on this, no matter what they say. So they're trying to play like defense or not say anything. I don't think that's a good strategy. They should just say what's up. Like, hey, if you guys put people on the court and you put stuff on the table that's like people's civil rights and you start removing them, yeah, you should pack the court at that point because you're doing harm on purpose. But if something like that doesn't happen, like there's a nuanced answer here. And it's not as simple as, yeah, we want to do it or no, we don't want to do it. It's way more complicated than that.
And make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes.
Oh, I love this
Thank you for
question.
the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know. Qasem Soleimani.
Look how beaten Mike Pence looks. He can't even.
Of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized.
Okay. I'm sick of this thing that he's talking about Iran, okay? There's something, many of you might not know this, many of you might know this. In the 50s, there was a democratic government in Iran. It was like a modern society. In a lot of ways, there's parts of it that still are. But the United States government did not like that because at the time, I can't remember this man's name who was elected, but he was in a legal battle with the UK government because he wanted to take the oil rights that existed in Iran and make it a national thing. He wanted all the oil exports from Iran in like 1959, I think is the year this happened. He wanted all those exports to be used to stimulate the economy of citizens. So like all the profits that came from exporting that to other countries would be redistributed through like a stimulus program or whatever they were going to do. The US government didn't like that. The CIA went in and helped orchestrate overthrowing that elected government, and they installed a religious Shah who basically turned the entire government into a theocracy, and we still see that today. Like that pretty much exists. And it stifled that country easily 50 years. I'm not saying they're like great. They've done a lot of terrible shit. But I'm telling you, the U.S. government was responsible for a big portion of this. Okay, I hate Mike Pence.
It's the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but...
You can't call someone a terrorist after you fuck their country up. A lot. Okay? That's a reasonable response to fight you back. If someone did that to us, we would bomb them tomorrow. I'm just telling you.
With regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump.
Okay. If Kamala doesn't respond with, I know Trump doesn't care about lives. He pulled out our military with our allies in Turkey, or the Kurds in Turkey, wherever it was, and like a whole bunch of people died because of our ineptitude, okay? Like, you can't sit there and be like, Trump cares about American soldiers, and then put our allies at risk, or death. That's not how that works.
Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith.
Republicans don't ever get to say that people need a fair hearing after they blocked a nomination for over a year. Get the fuck out of here.
That we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern.
I wish Kamala would hit him on this. It would make her look so much better.
Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views. And
Thank you,
pro-life views.
thank you, Vice President.
So
Your
my
time
hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes
What?
place, that
This is frustrating.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
with
you.
the Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former attorney.
When you have a judge saying that they're using their religious faith to determine legal precedent, like Amy Coney Barrett has done in the past, she's also made public statements about that. Yeah, it calls into question like their judgment. You can't impose the government is not allowed. We have a First Amendment. You can't impose or sponsor religion of any kind. You can't tell people they can't meet, and you can't tell people they can meet. You can't endorse it, and you can't block it. You can't do any of that. So when we're talking about a Supreme Court pick, and their religion infects the way they determine how they're going to do things, yeah, it is a big, big red flag. And the way I know this is true is because, let's say President Obama nominated a super staunch Muslim person to the Supreme Court. Do you think that not a single Republican is going to question their religion? Do you think for 1 second that they're just going to let that fly? They're not going to bring it up at all? They're super hypocritical on this issue. So do not listen to what Mike Pence is saying on this. He's a liar.
General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First
Oh
of
yeah,
all,
Mike Pence dodged the abortion question completely, by the way. He didn't even say shit. He didn't say he would endorse, he didn't even answer how he would support abortion being completely illegal in his state, or if he would do anything about that. He just skipped over that completely. He didn't even answer it.
Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as president of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next.
I gotta stop shitting on Pence for a second. I don't like what Kamala is doing, okay? She's running down the Democratic platitude, cliche stuff. Like, she's talking about her faith and all that. We all know this about them. They don't need to tell us in the debate. We don't care. She just needs to attack his horrible points, and she's not doing that. It's super frustrating.
President of the United States. And, before, when this conversation has come up, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll
She's just using the GOP logic from
Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the
4 years
issues
ago.
before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's all...
Look, if you're a guy and you have a very staunch opinion on abortion, you think it's wrong, I understand. I can understand how you think you're being ignored. But this is not a guy's issue, for one. For two, if there was laws put into place that governed what men could do with their bodies, like, let's say we imposed a no-shave initiative, and we told all men they could no longer shave, you best believe on day one people would be burning down buildings, okay? Men don't accept any limitations on their bodies whatsoever, even when it comes to anything you can think of. There's none. You can do anything. So the fact that women have any is kind of fucked.
So look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic.
I should clarify.
210,000...
Men don't have rules against what they can do with their bodies based on their gender or what their reproductive system does. There's no rules. The only rule... No. Yeah, there's definitely no rules. I was going to bring up the vasectomy rules, but even that that's a red herring. You can't even make an argument out of that. Point is, women have them. Men don't have rules. That's the reality we live in. You can disagree all you want, but that's just how it is.
100,000 people have died, and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
That's true.
I've said it before, and it bears repeating.
100% true.
This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing.
By the way, I read Trump's executive order about healthcare. It's called an American First Health Plan. It's 2 pages long. It's full of platitudes. It gives no details on how it's going to do any of the things it says. It says things like, here's what we're going to do for elderly people, and then it lists all the things that all the idealisms that they have, but it doesn't say what's going to happen. It just says the administration is going to support more of this. What? That's not a plan. Okay, if you guys don't believe me, go to whitehouse.gov, look up an American First Health Plan, read it. It's 2 pages. It's super, super short. It's not going to fix the giant broken system in this country, okay? Obamacare, through that massive, it was like an 800-page document, okay? Through that massive document, it's like right under 3%. Only 2.6% of Americans that previously didn't have insurance got coverage. Yes, that's millions of people, but it barely moved the needle. And that was 800 pages. You're telling me a 2-page executive order is going to revitalize our entire health system and get everyone covered? You are insane if you believe that. The Trump administration has been doing this like faux platitude gaslighting since day one, and people still believe it. I do not understand. If anyone is in opposition to this, and you want to argue for that 2-page executive order, please do it, because I don't understand.
Conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26,
that's a little bit of an
you can't
underestimation, I
coverage
think.
anymore. And here's the
It's
thing.
more like 30 or 40 million
The
Americans.
contrast could be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down.
There's no reason to have a
Let's
choice in
lower
healthcare.
Medicare
That makes no
eligibility.
sense.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true leadership.
You mentioned
The choice is you want
earlier,
healthcare now.
Vice President
That's the
Pence
choice.
says the
There is no other
president
choice,
is
by the way.
to
I don't want to deal with a
meeting
private
with
insurance
Texas
company.
with
None of that
health
shit.
conditions.
Just give me healthcare now. That's how it
You
works.
do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that.
Exactly. That's a great moderator question. How?
Affordable Care Act. So
How do you deal with it?
How
He
does your
doesn't
administration
ever talk about that,
protect
ever.
Americans
You'll
with
notice.
pre-existing conditions have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say
That was a really good question. They rarely do those. That was really good.
I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president.
Ah!
For the Senate.
His answer is, I couldn't be more proud.
And this is another one of those cases.
That's
where there's
awesome.
a dramatic contrast.
Look
Joe
at him
Biden
struggling to
supports
even get the thought out.
Taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They
That's
wanna
not true. That
increase
hasn't
funding
happened
for
ever.
Planned Parenthood.
There's been a federal ban on abortion
For our
monies
part,
for a long,
I
long
would never
time.
presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme
Okay,
Court,
there's a glaring contradiction here. Okay, do not ever, ever, ever believe when a conservative tells you they're pro-life. They are not pro-life. Okay, in many ways. They support a giant military. They say it all the time. They love the military. I don't believe they actually do. They just like to do it for political reasons. That same military is responsible for a lot of death in this world, whether you like it or not. It's not the fault of service members. It's not the fault of people that are in our military. It's the fault of people that control the military. They set our foreign policy. Our Congress does that. The president does that. They literally are responsible for some of the most death in the world to date. Okay, we nuked an entire country in the 40s. Okay, no one else has done that. You got to put all of this into perspective when Mike Pence is saying bullshit like that. Okay, they are not pro-life. They believe in capital punishment. They believe in states killing people in prison because their crimes are too heinous. They're not pro-life. They're pro making people have babies. That's it.
though. I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court?
Here he goes!
Amy Coney Barrett?
He's been trying to pigeonhole her for the last 20 minutes.
29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change them.
Okay, that's kind of a red herring again, because the Republicans are threatening to take away people's rights with the court. So the only reasonable response from the opposition is do anything necessary to prevent that from happening. If that means putting more judges on the court to make the vote stacked back in your favor, then so be it. They put 3 judges in the last 4 years. That's a lot of people on the Supreme Court.
Rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden
He's trying so hard
going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad
to get your way, like she's a child.
A little more. In 1864,
Ooh, I love this.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I'm glad she's doing a historical
in
context.
1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States.
I don't like that. That was a horrible defense. Sorry, Kamala. That was really bad. She basically just did a historical appeal to decorum, which clearly has been dead for 20 years. So I don't know why she's trying to... These two parties will never have that decorum again. That's gone. There is no playing together. That's over. I just want everyone to understand this. Like, even on main issues, they can't come together. For example, the latest polling on Medicare for All jumped from like 73-4% of voters wanting that to now we're over 80% of Americans want a Medicare for All system. They don't even touch that. So our politics is so divorced from what regular people want, you just got to understand that that was a terrible answer in a lot of ways.
And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime.
This is stupid.
On the highest court of our land.
Yes, we know this.
And so Joe and I are very clear.
Okay, you haven't been clear on this.
Voting right now. And
that's
it should
true.
Be their decision about.
You can't defend this and say that. That's not a defense.
For a lifetime.
This is super weak. I don't like this.
People, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court.
I'm actually with Mike Pence on this. She needs to answer this question better.
Let's talk about packing.
Once again, gave a non-answer. Joe Biden.
He's correct. That was a non-answer.
American people deserve a straight answer, and if you haven't figured it out,
she's been beating his ass up into this point, but he's got her on this.
The Supreme Court, if they somehow win this election, men and women, I got to tell you, people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court. If you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reach.
Okay, the reason Mike Pence is full of shit, though, is because they just put 3 people on the court. They literally got every advantage. And now they're trying to turn around and say, you can never do something like that to us. Like, that's... They literally never... They will never play fair. I need you all to understand this. If you're a Republican, if you're Democrat, whoever you vote for, there is a party in this country that will never, ever, ever concede. That means you and I will never benefit. The fact that there is a party in this country that will never concede to anything in our political realm, when Democrats make up 65, 70 million people in this country, probably more, just as many Republicans, like for an entire party to hold the other half of our country hostage and say, we will never do any of the things you want. That's insane. At least the Democrats always wussy out and do everything the Republicans want. I mean, there's that.
Jack, the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the pack. Yeah, I'm about to. So The Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50
She should have
people
started with this.
who President Trump appointed to the court
This
of
is a
appeals
great
for lifetime
point.
appointments, not one is black?
Awesome
What
point.
they've been doing.
Awesome.
Talk about packing a court. Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you.
They've been
Thank you,
court
Senator.
packing
Let's
for
go on and
3
talk
years
about
on
the
every
issue
lower
of
circuit,
racial
by the
justice.
way.
I just want the record.
Super,
to reflect
again,
that.
how many times do you have to see how hypocritical they are? Like, if you're a Republican, please tell me that that's not hypocritical.
In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot.
Democrats are hypocrites too,
after
don't get me
police
wrong.
officers
I'm just saying, the
executed
Republicans
search
do it
warrant
out loud in
narcotics
front of us.
investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that.
Oh, they're on Breonna
He was the
Taylor,
gun
okay.
registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer.
Mike Pence has no
The
good
officers then fired
answer
more
to
than
this.
20 rounds into
There's
the
no
They
way.
say they were
He's
acting
gonna
in
just go Blue Lives
self-defense.
Matter.
None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And
If someone in your family was killed by the cops, and it wasn't at any fault of their own, because it definitely was not Breonna's fault that she was killed. No one on this planet can argue she did anything wrong to deserve killing. That's just the facts. If you have a family member that's unjustly killed by the police, and you're currently supporting police on this issue, you got to understand, like, you shouldn't have to wait for it to happen to you to be on the side that's correct. The correct side is, even if the police did it through negligence, even if they killed her on accident, that's still illegal. Accidental killing is illegal. We have a whole criminal justice system that has that as one of the charges. It's called manslaughter. If you kill someone on accident, it's not even, you didn't even intend it at all. It was completely a fluke. It's still illegal. Okay? You should, most people in this country, like if you're not a police officer and you kill somebody on accident, you go to prison. Period. There's very rare circumstances where you get out of that. If you're a police officer, you never get in trouble. And that is why people are so mad. Because even if the cop was justified or not, it's the fact that someone died and they just let off. There's a big disparity here. Mike Pence will have no good answer to this.
her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street, so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And
Okay, that was an exaggeration. You're right, Kainoa. That's not true. It's not never. It's the fact that it happens a lot, though. The frequency of police not getting in trouble for accidental death is a lot of the time.
An American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country, of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those.
Okay, this is still why were they there? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to argue the facts with you. There's, like, every major news outlet posted exactly what happened with the cops going to Breonna Taylor's apartment. In fact, the warrant that they used to go to her apartment was a copy-paste from other warrants used in that whole investigation. And the reason that that's problematic is because that's not the proper procedure. Every warrant has to have its own justification, but they use the same justification on 3 or 4 warrants in the same case. Like literally word for word verbatim. So that's why it's a problem. I'm not saying it's illegal or bad. I'm saying it's problematic. It looks bad on optics.
Protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals.
She's given a horrible
and that's
answer
why
too,
Joe
by
Biden
the way.
And I have said on this.
She's
program,
completely failed this
look,
answer.
I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops.
Yeah, she's not doing well.
We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that.
That's true.
We will require a national registry for
Well,
police.
that doesn't mean George Floyd would be alive. He still could have gotten choked illegally. The legality didn't matter in terms of how George Floyd died.
Officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons.
Yeah, that's
Tax
actually a really
bail.
good idea.
And we will decriminalize marijuana, and
Thank you, Senator Harris.
we will expunge the records of those who have
Thank you,
been
Senator.
convicted.
Those are good
of
answers, but the
marijuana.
overall
And
answer
thank
is
you for
shit.
leadership on a tragic issue
Senator Harris,
of
your time
unarmed
is up.
black people in America.
And now she won't shut up
Thank you,
about it.
Senator Harris. Vice President.
I know
please
you're
take the question.
absolutely right about that, and Mike Pence
In
should
the
be
case of
slamming
Georgia,
her with that shit right now.
was
He
Justice
probably
Kennedy-
won't,
You
but
have 2
that's
minutes
completely correct.
uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathy.
That second part of your comment, definitely not true.
But
the first part,
I
absolutely
trust our
true.
justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think
I told you he wouldn't attack
with
her on
regard
this.
to
He's not.
George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse.
Justice was already
for
served
rioting
on George
and
Floyd.
looting.
Although the police officer that killed him got released today on bail for like $1 million. It was $1 million bail or
Flora
bond.
Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. Was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that
It's almost like if we had a more robust social safety net for small, medium business, like even in tragedy, they wouldn't lose. That kind of happens in other countries. I'm just saying. I mean, you can argue the validity of that, but that's a truth in the world. There are other countries in this world that have bigger safety nets than us. So when a business is faltering or failing, they have a chance to stop that. In America, it's you lose, which that's capitalism, and it is how it works. But you got to understand the disparity. There's a giant gap between like OECD countries. Here's America over here. Here's Europe over here. This happens at a much higher rate in our country, and that's basically the big difference here.
that America is systemically racist. And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that
America isn't systemically racist. It has systemically racist institutions. That doesn't mean there's racist individuals. It just means that non-racist individuals can work in a racist system and perpetuate it forward, even though they themselves are not racist. That is exactly what happens to police officers. They're not racist people, but they have to partake in acts that are racist because that's the culture. It's really bad. I'm not saying every single cop is like that. I'm saying that's what happens.
law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities.
Oh, good.
Is-
Pence
is
just
really
admitted
insane.
that.
To the men and
That's
women
great.
who serve in law
He gave a good
enforcement, I
answer.
want every
He also has a
American
fly
who
on
puts
his
a
head, so that's
uniform of
interesting.
Law enforcement every day. President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform,
Mike Pence has given a better
together
answer
a
on
group
this.
of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And
Yep.
then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources.
That bill was
But
a
we
joke,
don't
but
have to
he's
choose
also
between
correct.
supporting law enforcement improving public safety, and supporting our African American
Thank you,
neighbors
Vice
and
President.
all of our minorities.
He is correct on the
President
events
Trump's
that did
leadership
happen.
Thank you, Vice
will
President.
always stand with law enforcement.
He
and
still has a
do
fly on his head,
what
though.
we
Vice President
day
Pence,
wanted
thank
is
you. Your time
improve
is
the
up.
lives of African Americans,
Thank you, Vice
record
President.
unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and will
up.
fight for
Did the fly
school
die
choice
on his
for all
head?
government.
Thank you,
I mean,
Vice
look,
President.
you can see it.
Senator
Here.
Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured
Wait.
by the Vice President
There it
for
is.
what it means to enforce the laws of our
When he turns
country.
back the other
I'm
way,
only
you'll
one
see
on
it.
the stage who was personally prosecuted. Everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on
Yes,
the stage
Kainoa, but that
prosecuted
means
the
that
big banks,
you're
big
correct. That's
companies, and
capitalism. But
small
that means
guys.
that
I'm the only one on
it
the
also
stage
means that
to
at the same
prosecute
time,
the
if you take
colleges
larger
for
risk,
taking advantage
the
of our
downfall
data.
is significantly worse.
And the
We don't
reality
have
of
to live
this
in a
is
society like
that
that.
we
We
are
can have
talking
the best
in
of
less
taking
than
big
27
risks
days.
and also
Where last
catching us
week,
before we go to
the President
nothing.
of the United States
Okay?
took a debate
We don't have to
stage
go
in front of
all the way
70
down.
million
That's
Americans
insane.
and
We can
refused
stop right
to
here
condemn
and then
white
start again.
supremacists.
We don't have to go to nothing.
And
That's worse for the
it
economy.
wasn't
That's a
like he
horrible
didn't have a
economic
chance.
system. If you
He
have to
didn't do
constantly
it,
stop
then
and
he
start,
doubled down.
that stifles
And then he
innovation.
said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And
President Trump
this is
did
a
tell
part
white
of a
supremacists
pattern
to stand by. He did
of
say
Donald
that.
Trump's. He called Mexicans.
He did walk it back like 3 or 4
rapists
days later,
and
but he did say it
criminals.
on TV.
He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting.
I think that the way this should be talked about is the optics of what the Trump administration has done in regards to specific minority groups or whatever may not directly be racist, but it's the optics of it that makes it seem that way. Like the way they market it to everybody seems really bad. I don't know why they do this every time when it comes to banning specific types of people or talking about people immigrating here from Southern America or whatever. They make it seem like it's a racist intent. It's crazy. Yeah, but I mean, dude, you can make that same argument for Americans going to other countries. We do the same thing. I mean, traveling around the world, and people want to come here just as much as we want to go to other countries. You can't. You're making a false equivocation. That's not correct. You're having yes. The fact that we live in a capitalist society and over 45% of Americans make less than $50,000 a year, you cannot say that it's the greatest and most free. It's not. It's super limiting in a lot of ways. And it, as time has progressed, business interests and special interests, yes, absolutely, dude. This is backed up by data. You can't argue with the fact that 45% of Americans make less than $50,000 a year. And it's not because they don't fucking work hard. A lot of people in this country work hard and don't make a lot of money. That's just how it is. You can't say, oh my god, that's horrible, dude. Just because they're an employee, they have to be fucked forever? That's insane. Not everybody can own a business, man. It's just not, the numbers don't work that way. And there's no other country on this planet where every single person is a business owner.
The need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed, and on
Well,
the
yeah,
other
of course
side,
not.
there were neo-Nazis
Because
carrying
again, like I explained to you, the downside of the risk means they lose everything in their life. You understand? No, but that's not, the price to pay should not be you lose everything. That's crazy. The price to pay should just be you lose the business. That's it. You shouldn't lose everything else. Well, that's because you're a unique person, dude.
tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs, and Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we
He
have
did
as the
say that.
President of the United States. In America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together
Senator Harris.
and recognizes the
Also, Kainoa, just something to consider. I don't know if you saw, I can't remember if it was Time Magazine or New York Times or whom it was, but they talked about how middle-class Americans have lost upwards of over $1 trillion in wealth in the last 20, 30 years or whatever it was. And that all of that went up to the 1% or less than 1% of people. You don't if you set the company up with limitations to the liability and insurance. Yes, I understand that, but it's not just losing the company. It's the implications that come with all of that. Like, even if you have insurance and liability, if you lose, if your business fails, if you go bankrupt, your insurance and your liability don't necessarily matter at that point. Also, I'm talking about bankruptcy through no fault of necessarily the people running the business. I mean, if someone starts a business and they fail, well, yeah, you're right about that. That's very true. It's probably be the cheapest stock price when that happens.
Beauty in our diversity and the fact that we all have
Thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others.
Nobody selectively edits them. They play the whole thing.
Senator Harris conveniently admitted after the president made comments about people on either
Yeah,
side.
so you admit that it
of the
happens.
monuments.
Okay. So you admit that capitalism is responsible for taking wealth away from majority of people that are in the system. How is that a just or right system? What? Like, in order, like, the reason why I'm asking you this, yeah, you're right about that. But I'm making the philosophical argument here. When you have a system where a majority of the people do not own anything, don't have money, don't have power to change that, and all the money is put into the hands of a certainly select few amount of people, and then that passes through generation to generation, that only makes your country worse off. I don't know how you can make the argument that it's better to have wealth concentrated into the hands of a very small amount of people. That's never made sense. Also, you got to consider, like, how do you reconcile that ideology with after World War II and up into the late 70s, we had very high marginal tax rates, anywhere from 70 to 90%, depending on how wealthy you were. The economy didn't crash for 30 years. How do you defend capitalism when the best it ever functioned was when there was significant government intervention? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how you can make that argument. Like, even with Bill Clinton's 24 million jobs that he had in his term, there was still economic woes in that decade. Even with him doing well. Even with Reagan doing well. All of them had giant crashes, economic woes. Like, that didn't happen between 1949 and 1975. That didn't happen once. Like, and that was the result of high tax rates and a lot of other things that came out of the New Deal. A lot of that was reversed. Almost all of it, actually.
He condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren.
Yeah, but Kainoa, they do it through ill-gotten gains, man. They do it by manipulation. They do it by fucking people over. I love you too, man.
But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics.
Oh, he's finally hitting her on this. Okay, this is a good answer from him. This is great.
Disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't.
Okay, that's a little bit of a hyperbole. She didn't do nothing. She did some stuff.
I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself. President Trump.
Her record was atrocious.
For criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President.
He fought for educational choice and opportunities for African Americans.
I think Mike Pence has had two good answers so far, and that's pretty bad.
You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election itself.
He attacked my record. I would like an opportunity.
She's not going to be able to defend this.
Because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of
She's
what
doing
I
the same defense she did back
will be able
in
to
the
do
primaries.
under
This is not a good
Joe
answer.
Biden.
I told you she didn't have a good answer.
Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only
Did you see how fast she pivoted from my past agenda to my current agenda? She didn't even answer.
instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holds.
Thank you.
Not
She
only,
already said
Thank you,
this.
Senator.
I would like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier. In
Exactly.
Your hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes
It's not
I
good.
was the first statewide officer.
I don't know if that's
to
true, man. You have to
requirement
check.
that My agents.
It wouldn't-
wear
it would
body
not
cameras and
surprise
put
me
them on
whatsoever,
full-time.
though.
We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, they both said that.
Contrary to what you may believe.
Oh,
We
wait,
did
didn't
the
he
work
say that
of
it
instituting
exists?
reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work
Wait, maybe
we
I
will
didn't
do
hear
going
that right.
forward. And again, I will
Okay.
not be lectured by the Vice
Yeah, that
President
doesn't surprise me, dude, at all.
on our record
I told you they're hypocrites. I
of what we
said
have
that
done in
earlier.
terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose.
Or I guess
to-
that's not hypocrisy in that
first,
case.
I'd like
She's
you to
just
respond
setting a
first to
double
the
standard.
Question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in the
That's actually true.
Of course, we have
They have a very
supported
broad
Democrats,
coalition.
but also independents and Republicans.
All the current polls show they have the
7
broadest
members
coalition.
of,
In fact, Biden's
President
leading in
George
every
W.
age
Bush's
demographic,
cabinet
even seniors.
for
So
supporting
that's
our ticket.
pretty wild.
We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500.
Trump does not have a
generals,
diverse
retired
coalition
Generals and
at all.
former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy.
I hate
and
this.
to bring integrity
Why do
back
they
to
do
life.
this? What is this?
So we believe
This is
in the American
stupid.
people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com.
I back this message. I don't care if you disagree with me, agree with me, in a totally different party. I don't give a shit. You have a civic obligation to vote. It's a big deal. You have to, just to put it in good context.
And it is within our power
A lot of
to
Americans
use our
in the history of our
vote and
country
use
have
our
died
voice.
just to keep the right to vote. Now,
We
granted,
will win. And we will not
the
let
voting
anyone
rights
subvert
have,
our democracy
been very
with what Donald Trump
different
has been
over
doing.
the
After
course of our
Hillary
history. I
did
mean, when we
last
started,
week,
it was only rich white men that
again, in
owned
front of
property that
70
could vote.
million people,
And then the South tried to
openly
manipulate the Constitution so they could count slaves as population,
Joe Biden,
even
on the other
though,
hand, on that same
I don't know,
debate
that
stage, because
that
clearly
stemmed from a
Donald
big
Trump thinks he
racist
can run on a record
deal.
because
But
it's a failed record.
my point is,
Joe Biden on
you
that
have
debate
to
said,
vote
"Hey,
because it's super
please
important
vote."
that you do
So I'll
this.
repeat what Joe
Like
said. Please vote.
you as an
you.
individual
Senator. Vice
are given this
President
right by
Pence, President Trump has
birth
several
because
times
you're
refused
a
to commit
citizen,
himself
and
to
the
a
government
peaceful
can't infringe
transfer
on that
of
unless you're a
power
felon,
after
I
the
guess.
election.
But
If Vice President Biden
I'm just
was
saying,
declared the
you
winner,
guys
President
all
Trump
need to vote. It's
refuses
super
to
important.
accept
I don't care if you vote for
peaceful
Trump,
transfer of
whatever. I mean, I
power.
actually care, but
What would be your
don't vote for
role
Trump.
and
But if you do, at least you
responsibility
voted.
as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans is only...
this is a terrible answer. He's just giving platitudes.
When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
That's a giant exaggeration.
When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean,
they had a warrant.
This week, the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign.
This is kind of crazy. He's going into conspiracy theory right now.
What you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion.
Hey, Mike Pence, 210,000 Americans are dead, and you're worried about this?
In the Congress, tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this.
Ooh, that was a good red herring. Kaino, we can talk about that once the debate's over. Hold on, I gotta back this up.
Universal mail-in. Let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump.
Listen very carefully.
Every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules.
Okay, Republicans do this a lot. Democrats, not as much, but definitely Republicans do this a lot, where they project. Okay, they tell you to your face that whoever they're against is going to do X, Y, Z. Everything that they tell you is exactly what's going on their side. Okay, I just want you to understand that this is pure projection right here.
Creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud.
There's never been voter fraud in mail-in ballots. Even Trump's own administration did an investigation in the first 2 years, and they found absolutely nothing. In fact, they found that there was so few cases of voter fraud that the number of error was statistically irrelevant, meaning it happened so infrequently that they couldn't even say that any fraud even occurred. That's I think the numbers were, out of 40 million votes cast, they found 45 cases of potential fraud. Only 5 of them ended up being real. Those 5 cases were mistakes. They weren't even intentional fraud. It was just unintentional fraud, but it still was fraud. Just like I talked to you guys earlier about how unintentional murder is still murder, unintentional fraud is still fraud. So.
Election, we know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the.
I mailed in my ballot, by the way, and I didn't fraudulently do anything with it. I just signed the damn thing and sent it in.
Questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote,
I think both those ending answers were very poor. Kamala Harris's was kind of like repeating everything she said earlier, but way worse. And Mike Pence just made up a bunch of bullshit, basically. Both of them had bad answers.
Candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along? And then she added, your examples could make all the difference to bring us together.
Imagine getting shit on by an 8-year-old.
So each of you in turn,
They
I'd
both
like to
just
take 1
did.
minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And
He's got no answer for
let me
this.
just commend you for taking
He can't say we're going to get along because they won't.
I started following the news when I was very young. And in America,
This is Mike
we
Pence's
believe
most
in
wholesome
free and
answer,
open
easy.
exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world.
Okay. Prosperous, I'll give that to him. We're very prosperous. But freest, that's not true anymore. Almost every major industrial country has the same freedoms as us. So that's kind of silly.
I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at
That's
the
true.
relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on
Wow, I actually
polar
believe he cares about
opposites
this one
on the
thing.
Supreme Court of the United States. One very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together.
That's not true. They never
And
come
that's what
together.
people do in big cities
He's
and small
lying.
towns all across this country. So
They
I just want
don't.
to
Our
encourage
federal
everybody.
politics has
I
been
want to tell you
super
that,
hyper-partisan for at least
we're
8 or
gonna
10
work every
years.
day to have government as good as our people. The American people each
Hi,
and every
I miss
day
you too.
love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there. For
That's not true. He
times
just
of
lied.
need. We've especially learned that.
Thank you,
Through
Mr.
the-
Vice
Okay,
President.
if they come together, then where were they on Merrick Garland? Okay? Where were they on 1,000 things that clearly need addressing? Where were they on a better stimulus package for regular people? Trump tweeted like 2 days ago that he wants to stop that. And then 3 hours later, he walked all of it back. And then tried to say we're going to negotiate only on these very specific things. And none of that's even happened yet. So I don't even know what they're talking. This answer sucks too.
This year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
He started off all wholesome and ended
First
horrible.
Of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective. On
Man,
who
they
we are
can't
who
stop
we should be.
themselves. They always have to talk in
That is
platitudes.
a sign of leadership, and it's something we should all aspire to be. And that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden. One of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him, like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the
This is
last
barely a
4
better
years,
answer so
what
far.
Brecklin described
Barely.
has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as
Joe
president.
Biden absolutely
Joe
is a
Biden
bipartisan
has
type.
a history
He will do anything
of
Republicans want him to
lifting
do.
people
He will do
up
anything
and fighting for
Democrats
their
want him to do. That is
You
where
have to know
Joe
Joe's
Biden
story
is.
to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has
That's
known
true.
love.
He's lost his own family members. He
And
knows
so,
pain.
Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
That
the
was
future
better
of
than
our
Mike
country
Pence's
and
answer
what
simply
leadership
because she didn't pretend like we unify.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you.
That was
Vice
much
President.
better.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate.
What if Trump still has COVID for the next debate? Do you think they'll do it?
So there you have it, two candidates largely refraining from the fireworks, certainly a contrast to President Trump's performance last week in that first presidential debate.
Hey, we
Tonight
made it
was
through
much
it,
more
and people
civil.
weren't burning down the
Candidates
house,
really did
so
their
that's
best
good.
to dodge important, serious, tough questions from Susan Page, questions that they didn't want to answer. She asked a very good question, Susan Page, I must point out. And Mike Pence, in the process, also learned that it's nearly impossible to put a positive spin on the administration's record when it comes to coronavirus.
Yeah, you-
with more than 210,000
Yeah, no problem, Kainoa.
Americans dead.
I'm going to do the
And she
presidential
scored some
debates
points
too.
when
I'm
she
also
said
going to
these
live
words,
stream the election and
greatest
talk about that
failure
pretty
of a
much all night.
presidential
So
administration in the history of our country. The candidates, their spouses, they're on the stage right there. We'll continue to watch. In the meantime, let's check in with Jim.
how funny that the best part of the debate is watching them both stand there.
A normal debate, regular debate, not an emotionally abusive session with somebody who's a little unhinged. Both candidates got in some punches. I thought Senator Harris was effective when going after the administration's record when it came to COVID. Obviously, I thought Vice President Pence going after Biden's record and
I love
and
listening to
attacking
Tap
Harris's,
Jaker because he's
on
just
the
so
fringes
silly
of her
sometimes.
party, which, as we expected, I think there will be a lot that Republicans will be happy to talk about when it comes to his performance. It was more standard. There is, I think, a disparity in terms of some of the unanswered questions. Both of them did a lot of dodging. Harris wouldn't answer the question about the
Ooh,
court
I don't agree with that assessment. See, he says silly shit like that. He said they both did a lot of dodging. That's not true. Kamala didn't dodge a lot of stuff. She did dodge the court thing, which they've been doing for weeks. She dodged the that second to last answer. I can't remember what the question was. But Mike Pence was dodging every question. Make no mistake. He was dodging a lot of stuff. And he was trying to spin a lot of things as good that were not good. So.
Yeah, again, and Biden and Harris should answer it. But on the other hand, Pence wouldn't answer the question about why the U.S. death rate from COVID is so much worse than any other wealthy
Yeah, he
country.
wouldn't answer that.
And he wouldn't commit to a peaceful transfer.
He wouldn't do that
So
either.
while they both dodged questions, I can't help but think these ones that Pence dodged are somewhat more significant.
And I can add another.
Yeah, I
one to
agree.
that That's very significant.
He
wouldn't
dodged more
answer
significant
how
questions than
a
Kamala did.
second term of the Trump administration would preserve pre-existing condition promises that is under Obamacare, which they're trying to do away with in the court. I agree with you. Our hearts are racing a little bit less right now than they were last week. This was much more civilized, but it was really stunning to see the way Mike Pence pivoted almost at every question. Not
I
answering
agree.
the question, and not
He
going
did.
back to actually follow up on the question. Kamala Harris was more respectful of the questions and tried to answer the
She
questions.
did,
I'm not sure if that got her anywhere. I do
she
think at the
she
end
definitely
of the day,
gave better
Mike Pence
answers
did
to
what he
the
needed to do,
question
maybe aligned
asked
them, and
instead
same
of
with
switching to
Senator Harris.
platitudes the whole
I
time,
think
which is
we,
a lot of
as we all
what
have
Mike
heard
Pence
Mike
was doing.
Pence, we know that this is his superpower as an interviewee. He often
Kamala's
just
last two
completely
answers were shit,
disregards
though.
the
They were
question,
not good.
answers the way that he thinks is best. But in the context of this debate, it really did create this imbalance between the two of them. And I do think that Harris missed some opportunities here.
100% agree.
To push back at opportunities when Pence took them, even when it wasn't his turn, and then he was given time to go over by 30 seconds here.
I would
35
say this
seconds
debate
there.
was
I mean,
fairly
these are
even in
technicalities,
terms
but in
of
the moment, what it means is
performance.
that you
In
felt
terms
like
of
you got more
answers,
talking time from Pence.
I think Harris had more on question answers, so by that metric she did a little better. She also had 3 or 4. She had 2 bad ones, 2 not so good ones. Pence had 4 bad or 5 bad answers. He had 2 really bad ones. So I'm gonna give it to Harris, but not by like a lot.
White men,
Maybe
but definitely men
a few
on
points.
the stage when it comes to being on a ticket.
The reason I'm not giving Harris more points is because she gave too many platitude answers. I want to hear specific policy. I want to hear exactly how Trump's policies are bad. I need you to tell me the data. I need you to tell other people, this is what happened, this was the result. Like, that's what they need to talk about. Kamala spent about half the time not doing that.
Say Mike Pence can.
Mike Pence didn't do that shit at all. He didn't even do it once.
And offending some segment of the electorate. I'm not saying it should be that way, but I'm wondering if it is that way.
Well, I'll tell you this, and Abby, I want to get your thoughts on this. I was texting with a friend who is an African-American man saying, do you think that she's kind of letting some things go in a way that maybe she shouldn't? And the answer was,
okay, I'm over this. I'm not going to listen to this shit anymore. Yeah, I'll be live for all the rest of the debates and the election. So if you want to watch, that's what I'm going to be doing.
I mean, she was tough, and she certainly had her moments.
I don't want to listen to CNN anymore. I'm done with this. If you guys want to ask me more questions, just post them on under the live video, and I'll answer them there.
I'm sure, for every woman in politics.